بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيدا. يا ربنا لك الحمد حتى ترضى، ولك الحمد إذا رضيت، ولك الحمد بعد الرضا. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين، وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين، وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين، وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي، أما بعد. So, welcome everyone to the study of Tawhid, Shirk and Bid'ah. And inshallah, what we'll be doing is going through initially what to expect, what the objectives are, and what we'll be covering. So the sessions will be split between the 2 hours. The initial hour we'll talk about Tawheed and Shirk, and then we'll speak about Bid'ah. It's going to be a condensed study of what otherwise might be a more lengthy study. And so not everything will be covered. And for those that do want to study further, we can opt to do that, inshallah, as well. So, starting with today. Today, inshallah, the first week, we're going to be talking about the foundations. So, this is a really important lesson. We'll talk about the basics of the three areas, what they mean, what the pillars are, what the aspects are, and some of the misunderstandings that take place because of the foundations being weak. And then we're going to build on to that. So it's going to be progressive in the way we're going to study it. So then we'll talk about specific aspects of Tawheed and Shirk. We'll look at examples, and then we'll further develop our understanding of Bid'ah through the Qur'an, through the Hadith, through the Sahaba, through the Salaf. What did they say? What was their understanding? And then again, we'll build on Tawheed and Shirk, studying further the elements and the attributes of Allah and further examples. And likewise, then with Bid'ah, we look at the permissibility, the arguments around permissibility and categorization. And then we'll move on to further areas, Shirk or Tawheed in injunctions, looking at things literally, figuratively, looking at Tawheed and Shirk and veneration in worship. And then finally, we'll close in also looking at the positions of the Imams, the positions of the Hadith scholars in terms of Bid'ah. So that's going to be the plan. And what we might not get time for is a more in-depth look because it's just 4 weeks. So we might not talk about tawassul, intermediation. Is that permissible or not? But those are alive, those have passed away. Isti'ana, istighatha, seeking help, right? Is that allowed or not? Seeking blessings through relics like the hair, the clothing, you know, things like that, or visiting graves of the pious, quote unquote, grave worship, or making dua, taking benefit from these things, and then other things related to bid'ah. These are topics that have genuine disagreements on and are larger discussions, so we definitely probably won't get time. We might touch on certain things, but we won't get time on that. Our mission is essentially to get a foundational understanding of the Quran and the Hadith regarding these topics that we've received based on the understanding of the Sahaba, the Salaf, and the Salihin. And really to make you and to help you and to encourage you to think and make an informed decision on these things. My job is to guide you, is not to tell you what's right and what's wrong, but it's to inform you of what we've received with ijazah and to make this knowledge a guiding compass for you in your life. And inshallah, also that you can go on and teach others this study as well, inshallah. So we start off with the importance of Tawheed. Tawheed forms the foundation of our entire deen. It's the foundation. Without it, and without an unwavering belief in the oneness of Allah, we merit nothing, because then the entire foundation of the deen is finished. It's gone. We're in an entirely different territory. Is the root of the deen. And all righteous deeds are as branches. Tawheed is the root, is the foundation. So it's very important. What does it mean? So this is what we'll be mainly exploring today. What does it mean, and what does shirk mean, and how are they separate to one another, and how do they correlate? So Tawheed, it comes from the verb root of wahada, which means to make something one and unique. So you're rejecting multiplicity. Okay? And so Tawheed in application as a science, as a subject that we're speaking about, not the literal meaning, but as a subject, it means the unwavering belief in divine oneness. Right? The unique oneness of Allah, that He's matchless, He's peerless in two things: His essence and His attributes. That there's no partner, no equal to Him. Okay? This we won't have time to look at further. This is the essence of what it means. Scholars have elaborated about it. They've explained Tawheed, such as Imam al-Tahawi and Aqidah al-Tahawiyah, Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, Imam al-Ghazali, Imam Umar bin Muhammad al-Nasafi, and Aqidah al-Nasafiyah. These are just examples. When I will eventually tell you or recommend to you the book to read, when we come to the conclusion, these things are covered in that, and you can read them further. So shirk on the opposite side comes from shirka, which means to associate, to make something or someone a partner with Allah. And again, two things: His essence and His attributes. And so it requires a share in something as partners. And I've given two quotes here as an example of that. For example, Sa'd ad-Din al-Taftazani, in his commentary of Aqaid al-Nasafiyah, he said that Ishraq, as in shirk, is to affirm a partner in divinity. So this is essence. And in the necessary being, essence, as the Zoroastrians do. What it means to affirm that something else merits worship, as idol worshippers argue. So His attributes and His essence. Another example, Ibn Manzur al-Ifriqi, he says, Ashraka billah, to make shirk with Allah is to set up a partner in His kingdomship, in His mulk, an attribute of Allah. Far exalted is Allah from that. And shirk is that someone sets up a partner with Allah in His lordship, another attribute. And far exalted is Allah from having partners or equals. For Allah is one, He has no partner, no equal or like. And this is from Lisan al-Arab. Now, the next point is that shirk is something that will never be the fear of the ummah. As per the words of the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, I do not fear upon all my ummah shirk after me. But what I do fear is that they will compete for the world and they'll kill one another over it. And so falling into destruction as those who were destroyed before you. This is in Sahih and Muslim, and the reference is given there. It's also in other collections as well. So the fear wasn't shirk. And what's important about this is that it sets the foundation, because number one, this was mentioned in the farewell address. meaning there was no sermon after it. It was his last word. And the implication of that is that the entire community thereby is protected from the enormity of shirk. That there's no reason to fear that it will become commonplace amongst the ummah. Yet there's people amongst us who believe it's commonplace today, right? Whereas the Rasul said it doesn't, there's no fear of it. Rather, the fear is something else entirely. It's the dunya. Now, what we really, really need to hone in and understand is that both of these concepts, rather, they're not even concepts, they're beliefs. These beliefs are opposites. They don't intermix, they're complete opposites. Shirk is creating partners. Tawhid is to go against that. Right? So it's different. Or rather, you can do it the other way around. Shirk, right? Creating partners. Tawheed, no partners. Tawheed, no partners. Shirk, creating partners. So shirk is to go against Tawheed. They're opposites. So if something's Tawheed, it's a negation of shirk. It's like to say Tawheed is day and shirk is night. They both have different attributes and they're the opposites. And since they're opposites, you can't link them and you can't unite them. They will never intermix. And this is important because there's certain people, they will label certain actions as being shirk automatically without thinking. And one of the reasons for that is that they mix the levels or the gradings of certain actions. For example, an impermissible act can't be labeled shirk because not every impermissible act will be shirk. For example, I'm drinking alcohol. Is that shirk? No, that's haram. That's haram. Can't be shirk. And not every permissible act is tawheed as well. Halal food. I can't say that's tawheed. And so claiming something to be shirk is a big deal. That's the central point I'm trying to make here. It's a big deal because it takes you out of the fold of Islam to say something is shirk. But what I'm explaining here is that when you do something that is haram, is disobedience, right? It's not necessarily shirk. It depends on the degree of the haram. That's what will determine whether it's shirk or not. And what we've done is mix things up. And so we shouldn't be quick to label things. To declare an act or a belief as shirk, we've got to then show an aspect of Tawheed and how that's been violated, to what degree, to what extent. And this is going to be the purpose of our study. We want to really understand these things. Likewise, in Sharia, so I know we've got a lawyer here in our group. He studied with me. And so he's going to like these points. Everything in Sharia, as in Islamic jurisprudence, everything has a positive or a negative element. So positive, the highest degree of a positive is the fard actions. The highest degree in terms of the negative actions is haram. Okay? And then if you imagine two columns, you got fard at the top and you got haram at the top on one side. And then you go down from there. When you go down from there, you're getting other grades and they're getting weaker and weaker in their status. Some are stronger, some are weaker. And every act will have one positive and one negative, and they carry a different weight. For example, you can't make a makruh, something that's disliked, into a haram. If you understand this basic thing, that every action carries a different weight, right? And so just as we say every permissible act, every fard, or rather, just as we say every permissible act is not a fard, We don't say that every makruh act, every disliked act is haram. But shirk, it's got a higher grade than haram. It's higher than that. Why? Because it's related to belief, not just actions. You know, when we study criminal law, in criminal law, if somebody's done something that's accused to be a crime, you've got to ascertain whether that person has also done that action with the belief of a crime. It's called mens rea. You've got to prove that they have that intent to do that crime in terms of law. You've got to prove that. So shirk is a belief. It's not just an action. That's got to be proven. Now, if you do a haram, naturally, then it means you've not automatically done shirk. You've got to consider the level of that haram being done, right? Now, just a bit more on this. So in Islamic jurisprudence, you've got actions that carry different legal status or a different legal or moral status. There's usually 5 commissions and omissions. And by the way, this is according to the Hanafi school of thought, Hanafi fiqh. So you've got fard, the haram. You've got the wajib, imperative, which is just beneath the fard. And then the opposite side is what's called makruh, tahrimi, for the condemned. Then underneath wajib, we have sunnah mu'akkada, a recommendation, a mandatory recommendation, something that the Rasul did with habit, a sunnah that he did with habit, he never left it. And then you have the isa'i on the other side, disapproved that. Then you have sunnah ghayr mu'akkada, a recommendation that's lower than a mandatory recommendation, something that the Prophet used to do with regularity, but there were certain places, sometimes, where he didn't do it. And then you have the makruh, tanzihi, something that's improper. And then on the other side again, you have something mustahab, is commendable, something that's permissible. You can do it. And then on the other side, khilaf al-awla, something that's uncommendable. And then you have something that's in between. It's indifferent. It's permissible. You can do it, but it doesn't carry any reward. It doesn't carry any punishment. It lives in between, right? It's the gray area. So when someone's done something wrong, the point here is that the level of impermissibility is explained. And it's the same for shirk. Not all the violations that somebody can do is going to be of the same magnitude. And the understanding of the level of impermissibility helps us in doing what? It helps us to recognize and identify the seriousness of the action. Similarly with shirk, understanding its degree, whether it's blatant shirk, whether it's a minor shirk, whether it's a major shirk, whether it's something that only resembles shirk, we have to really identify that. And it's crucial for proper judgment. Why? Because if you're just automatically going to just say, this is shirk, he is a mushrik, she is a mushrika, you're taking somebody else out of Islam. And that has serious repercussions. And it's not something to be taken lightly. And so to prove shirk, you're proving disbelief. And so you need to first show how Tawhid is being negated with evidence from the Kitab and the Sunnah. For example, I have Brother Tahir next to me. If he's fallen ill and he's got a flu, but he comes to me, an unqualified doctor, and I say, you got TB. I'm 100% sure you got TB, right? I've got a certificate from Pakistan. I'm a doctor, right? And then somebody else says, no, it's cancer. It's obviously wrong. You've got a flu. I can't make that judgment. I need to have some sort of knowledge. I need to know what I'm dealing with in detail. A TikTok video isn't enough to say that thing's shirk. Here's evidence. This group of people are doing this act. It's shirk. It's not enough. We need to go there. We need to see what they're doing. We need to talk to them. We need to understand what's going on. Seeing that TikTok video doesn't make your verdict TikTok. It does not. We're not TikTok. We got to make our verdict TikTok, right? And so the next thing is another example, just to further this understanding, what I'm trying to tell you and explain to you. If we think about faith, Iman's the highest standard. Kufr, disbelief, stands opposite to it. A believer is the opposite of a disbeliever, okay? But somebody who's a believer and is disobedient or is corrupt, somebody that's doing haram or is a fasiq, is not the opposite of a believer. That person is just done wrong, but they're still considered Muslim. They're sinning, that doesn't make them a disbeliever. Likewise, Tawhid is the highest standard, and Shirk stands right opposite to it. A monotheist, a muwahhid, stands opposite to who? An idolater. Not opposite to a sinner. A disobedient Muslim then remains a believer in Tawheed despite the sin. He's not expelled from the religion. Likewise, Shirk, it can't be the opposite of a fard, of a wajib, or a sunnah, or you, just because you left or you did something haram, or you left a fard, or you left a sunnah, it's not shirk. Shirk is only shirk when Tawheed is violated. And the reason I keep mentioning this is because, unfortunately, people, they make this mistake. And then how do you determine whether Tawheed is violated? How? Well, you got to ask a set of questions. You got to determine what dimension of Tawheed is being violated, what aspect. Is the thing that you've seen or you've heard or you're partaking in, does it have a dimension or aspect that's an exclusive right of Allah? Is that what the belief is carrying out? Is it something that can't have a partner, that Allah can't have? It's nothing where an attribute or an essence of Allah, where just you're creating a partnership in that thing. Or is it something that's common attribute? Is it like for like with Allah, or is it something that's similar, but it's not the same? For example, sharing a name or an action or an attribute where the meaning and the application of it are different. For example, Allah says he's hearing, he's seeing, he's all hearing, he's all seeing. He's generous, he's knowing, he's full of pity, he's merciful, he's a protecting friend, he's a wali, he's a sayyid, he's a master. All of these words, for example, they're also used for the Prophet ﷺ in the entire Qur'an. They're even used for us. Allah says that he's a witness. He also says for the Rasul that he's a shahid, that he's a witness. He also says for us that we'll be a witness. But they're all used in a different sense. They're common attributes, but they're used in a different degree to a different extent per the subject or the object. And so shirk must be evidence. That's why Shah Wali Allah Dehlawi, he said that shirk is to affirm Allah's unique attributes, but other than him, his unique attributes, the Most High. And unique attributes are not shared. The unique attributes of Allah, the exclusive attributes, they can never be shared. If anybody claims that or has a belief like that, that's categorically shirk. Nobody can do that. And so the roots of shirk are four things. That we have, or somebody has a belief in someone other than Allah, whose existence they believe is rationally necessary. They've made that person or that thing into God. Baal Sharif. Huh? Or the flying spaghetti monster. Right? Or Zeus. Right? Or that also that thing, that person, that supernatural entity it merits worship. Or that supernatural entity or that thing or that belief, it possesses the unique attributes, the complete uniqueness of Allah, like omniscience or omnipotence or the ability to create. Yeah. And the fourth thing, that thing or that belief, that it possesses divine attributes in the same vein that only befits Allah, even if it's momentarily, even if it's a second. Shirk. These four things are the roots of shirk. These things have to be proven. Okay? These must be proven for shirk to be shirk. Why? Because again, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. You know, when somebody does a crime and the hudud laws are in place, the requirements to convict that individual are also very high because it carries a serious consequence. There's punishment. And so the criterion to prove a crime is really, really high. It's the same with shirk because it's so serious, it takes you out of Islam. Another thing now to remember is that shirk isn't based on some sort of modality. It's not based on mass or time. It's based on modality, the mode of something, the structure of something, the nature of something, and its reality. Meaning we have to prove those four things that we just mentioned, particularly the attributes, the modality, the nature of Allah. Is that being validated for someone else other than Him? With the exact same modality, the exact same nature, the exact same reality. If so, no doubt it's going to be shirk. But we've got to remember our role. It begins from here, that we need to know Allah. We need to know Him. That's our task. That's our task, to know Him, to know His names, to live His names, to know His attributes, to live His attributes, to know of His actions, to live His actions, begging for His honor and to be amongst His elite. Because Tawhid is purely His right. And Shirk is the negation of it. And so therefore, it's a negation of His right. So it's a very big deal. And now what we're going to do is we're going to then start with understanding what the 7 pillars of Tawheed are. This is where it begins with. What are the 7 pillars of Tawheed? And these we discover from Surah Al-Ikhlas. These describe the unique oneness of Allah, this entire surah. And it's the summary of the Qur'an as well, in a sense. Surah Al-Ikhlas, we all know Surah Al-Ikhlas. Qul huwallahu ahad. Say, O Prophet, He is Allah, one. Allah, the sustainer. He has never had offspring, nor was He born. And there's none comparable to Him. Now, what's the first pillar? The first pillar is the medium of messengership. The first pillar is based on the command of say, Qul. That's where we get the first pillar. From say, O Prophet. Qul. Meaning that our faith in Tawheed, our faith in the oneness of Allah arises through the means of the Prophet ﷺ. We declare His oneness just as He did. When the Rasul ﷺ said, Qul huwallahu ahad, say Allah is one, we said, say Allah is one. And then we pass it on. Say Allah is one, say Allah is one, say Allah is one. We said it through Him. Allah could have said, Huwallah ahad. Allah is one. He didn't say that. He added the word Qul to it. You need to say it. O Messenger of Allah, you need to say it to people. Say this. I'm telling you to say this. Say it. And we have to declare this oneness through Him. Tawheed, therefore, it becomes complete Iman when we've adopted faith through the Messenger ﷺ. More on this, I'll explain it more. So, For example, there's three elements here. Allah is being wahda. He's being one. This is a numerical thing. It's absolute oneness. And then you have a term wahdaniyah, unicity. This is a term that's theoretical. It's something that's just a concept. It's used in philosophy, it's used in theology, it's used in maths. Unicity, wahdaniyah. But Allah is above these. Tawhid is a belief. It is not a concept. It's not an idea. It's a belief. It's a belief system. And what we're saying here is that Tawheed is to believe in divine oneness through the means of the messenger. Why? Because personal reasoning, a personal opinion isn't Iman. Faith actually is knowing the Creator by the means of the messenger, because faith seeks revelation. It doesn't seek personal opinion. I give you examples of it. Philosophers, academics. Okay, so if you're talking about wahdaniyah and those that people that are studying Tawheed, they just study it as a subject and they know it inside out, but they've never adopted it as faith. Why? Because they took knowledge about something that's an absolute reality, but from their own thoughts, from their own experiences. They just get a buzz from studying. That's it. Iblis was the same. He had the most knowledge. He had so much knowledge, but he was stripped from faith. That knowledge didn't save him. That knowledge didn't help him. He's stripped of faith after having made a decision based on what? His own thinking, his own logic. And his logic seemed to be okay. But no, he was disobeying Allah. He didn't accept prophethood. He didn't accept that. That was the issue. Though he knew Allah, Allah wasn't enough. He had to accept prophethood. His evidence was based on thought. Allah rejected it. The angels, though, they knew. They knew what was going on. But they still said, we don't know. Right? Further examples. The companions did a similar thing. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ at Mina, on the day of Arafah, when the Prophet ﷺ asked the companions, this is day of Arafah, imagine you standing there, the sermon's happening, the day of Arafah, and the Prophet ﷺ asked a question, what day is this? What place is this? And they said, Allah and His Messenger know better. They didn't answer it. They didn't answer it because they said Allah and His Rasul know better. Why? Because if the Rasul said all of a sudden, it's not the day of Arafah, it's not Hajj, we're not in Mina, things would have changed. And they didn't want to speak of their own opinion. They wanted to speak through the means of the Prophet ﷺ. And there were people who accepted faith in Allah and then they died. But they were given paradise. What did they do? They just saw the Rasul. They accepted Islam through him. Right? They didn't do anything else. They accepted Islam through him. And they passed away. At the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, for example, they worshipped the signs of creation. Things in creation, the sun and the moon. And they did that on their reasoning, on their own thinking, not based on what revelation had told them, but their own reasoning, which is why Ibrahim alayhi salam spoke to them and he rejected that idea. He says, look, the sun does this, the moon does this, it can't be God. There's no way. Likewise, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salam, when he asked his sons about who they would worship and what would they do after he passed on his deathbed, they didn't say Allah directly. They were going to worship Allah. They didn't say that. They said, Ilaha ka. We will continue to worship your God. Ilahaka wa ilaha abaik. And the God of your forefathers. Ibrahim wa Ismail wa Ishaq wa Ishaq. ilahan wahidan. The forefathers, your forefathers, Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq, the one God. And وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ, and we are Muslims. To him we all submit. It wasn't a personal based faith, even here. One point is about adab, but one point is recognizing who it's coming from. What is the means of Tawhid? Is prophecy. When the Rasul when it came to him the revelation and warn your close relatives, when this ayah was revealed, the Prophet gathered everyone at Mount Safa, and then he made that famous call that you all know to believe. What was the first thing he said? That that you know about me. And he asked them to believe based on the veracity of himself. As in, they had to believe in him first and then believe. But then people turned around and said, nah, wayhak, we're not going to believe in you. How dare you do that? Yeah, you're honest. We get it. But they didn't believe. The Prophet ﷺ brought the good news of Tawhid. But it didn't penetrate. It didn't reach them. Because they're based on a personal opinion. Belief in Allah, what we're saying, it requires Prophet. Even just look at the Shahada. It's not complete without Muhammad Rasulullah. Right? The unseen representation. Now, for example, this is also representative of the unseen and we being representatives of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In the absence of that incident, we're saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Without seeing the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we're saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Without that experience, we're believing. So what's our evidence? What's our evidence? What's our evidence of Muhammad Rasulullah? It is the Rasul himself. He said it. Even though it was unseen. La ilaha illallah, the Prophet ﷺ is a representative of it. Muhammad Rasulullah, we're representatives of it. Right? We believe in it. It's a means. Okay? The second pillar is from Allahu Ahad. Okay? It's that Allah is incomprehensible. Allah is incomprehensible. It's from the words Hu Allah. Allah uses the word He. He didn't say, hey, Qul Allahu Ahad. He says, say He. Allah is one. We read that Allah says that He's nearer to us than our own jugular veins. But He's not perceived. He, when we say something He or she, we can perceive it. Right? It's a female, it's a male. Okay? Allah doesn't have a gender. Okay? Now, He's used to manifest His glory because despite Him being so close, despite His presence being with us, He's transcendent. We can't comprehend it. He's so near, we can't comprehend it. Allah is beyond physical, rational, spiritual senses. And then Allah uses the word Allah, the ism al-jalala. He doesn't use the word Rahman. He uses, for example, He says Allah. And the ism of Allah is unique, it's sublime. No one can take a share of it. Even if you split Allah up, you take the alif out, it still goes to Allah. You take the lam out, it still goes to Allah. You take the next lam out, it still goes to Allah. And it's left with who, it still goes to Allah. It's so unique. It's so unique. But if we had to use Rahman, for example, قُلْ هُوَ الرَّحْمَنُ أَحَدٌ, for example, it wouldn't have been unique. It would have been a common attribute. Because the act of mercy, kindness, is also something that's shared. with creation. But Allah is unique. Put unique. You use a word that is unique. Allah. And then Ahad, the third pillar, that is uniquely one. Ahad is an exaggerated form of Wahid, which means one. It eliminates all possibilities of anything in existence as a creator other than Allah. And Ahad is also traceless. It's so unique. There's nothing worthy of worship but Him. So the first pillar was the means of messengership. The second pillar was that He's incomprehensible. And now the third pillar is His ultimate oneness. He's uniquely one. The fourth is self-sufficiency. As-Samad. Allahu Samad. As-Samadiyya has got a wide meaning to it. Allah is transcendent. He's a protector. He's far superior. He's without beginning or end. He is the fulfillment of all needs. As-Samad. He is the fulfillment of all needs. He's needed by everyone. He's the sustainer. And we're helpless without Him. Yeah? The fourth pillar. These are all pillars of Tawhid. Next thing, no offspring. He's free from producing a child. Yeah? So Allah's free from that. Because to suggest so is to suggest genetic features of a father being inherited. Allah rejected the beliefs of the Jews and the Christians. Uzayrun ibn Allah, وقالت اليهود Uzayrun ibn Allah. Or Masih ibn Allah. Then Uzayr was the son of God. Isa alayhi salam, son of God. Now, if he had a son who wasn't a God, then his authority would have been questioned. But he's Ahad. He doesn't need family connection. He's so unique. He doesn't even need family connection. The sixth pillar, he is not born. He is free from a beginning. Since nobody's his like, who can ever be his origin? Who can ever be his source? Who can ever be his cause? Not a father, nor a son. That's his glory, actually. That he has no father, that he has no son. That's his glory. You know, Subhan, when we say Subhanallah, I was thinking about this, Subhanallah. When we say Subhanallah, I was thinking some people, they start to say things to brothers and sisters that use Subhanallah all the time. You know, somebody's died, Subhanallah, they passed away. And then they say, how can you say Subhanallah? I thought Subhanallah is supposed to be used with things that are like positive. You know, I like this thing, or this thing is amazing. You say Subhanallah. And then I was thinking, and I was saying, in fact, Allah uses Subhanallah, for things that are negative, to counteract a negative entire Qur'an. Like He has no father, He has no son. Like this is His Subhan. Or He uses Subhan, like Subhanalladhi Asra. Subhan, in a way to manifest His glory. That this is a thing that's a miracle, it's miraculous. It's beyond the ordinary, right? And it's significant. That's a side point. And Allah is free from any blood connections. You know, these are uniquely one. And a side point here, another side point here. And that is about birthday celebrations, the Mawlid, right? Just from this aspect that He's not born. From this aspect, the idea of birthdays is actually a rejection of Shirk. Birthdays is actually an affirmation of Tawhid, because Allah has no birth. He doesn't have a birth. And we do the opposite, hopefully. I hope. I'm pointing fingers at the screen here. I hope you're doing the opposite of what Christians do. Right? And then the seventh pillar, absolutely incomparable. There's none that can compare to Him. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. The key term is kufuwan. He's unequaled, He's matchless, He's peerless, He's in need of no one. And as humans, we are dignified by children. We're dignified by what we can achieve by our actions. But Allah is already unique. He's already notable. His notability is unique in not having children. And so the question for us is this entity that we're talking about that's so unique, we need to think, we're going to be meeting him. Are we ready to meet somebody so unique? Are we ready to meet somebody that's dignified by his own essence, by his own attributes? The things that dignify us is beyond him. Are we ready? Are we ready for that? And that's a key question. Now, a note on common attributes. There are common attributes, like I've mentioned before, that can be shared between creator and creation, but the reality is something different. So both attributes that are befitting of either the creator or those of creation, they're never alike. And the key point here is that we affirming common attributes for creation isn't shirk, because they're not exclusive attributes. Hearing, seeing, kind, merciful, witness, speaking. When common attributes are claimed in their limited created form, it doesn't constitute shirk. Okay, so we've got to remember this as well. So these are the 7 pillars. So to believe in all of these things is the epitome of Tawhid. To deny these is shirk. But anything that's permissible, that's not mentioned in this surah, can hold true for other than Allah. Regarding permissible things. Okay? And regarding permissible things, a shirk is an injustice. Because Islam demands all Muslims shun. Not only shirk, but this injustice as well. As we've mentioned, as I've explained, the seriousness of it. And now there's aspects of Tawheed. There's aspects of shirk. These are 5 aspects. And then within those aspects, there's different things. So there's oneness in his lordship. So we look at his essence, his creation. We look at oneness in his divinity, worship, power, supplication, knowledge, his names, his attributes, his actions, his sanctity, making vows, making oaths. And then the injunctions, commands. Yeah? As extensional rulings, legal rulings, oneness of Allah. Now, likewise, standing in the opposite direction is shirk. The same aspects. So, idolatry in lordship, idolatry in divinity, idolatry in names and attributes, idolatry in sanctities, idolatry in injunctions. Okay? They stand side by side, but they're opposites. To claim shirk, we've got to negate Tawheed, as in what's being negated of these things, these aspects. What sub-aspect? What's taking place? We've got to prove this. We have to be detailed because it's serious in nature. We've got to do that. Okay? And so the last thing, how is Tawheed and Shirk determined? How can we do that at a very basic level? So whilst these are things that we got to prove, the basic level, okay, we got to first remember the complete opposites. The mutually exclusive, day v night, male v female. You've got to know the limits of something to know its reality. You've got to be precise as to the scope and the ingredients. Okay? So you have something called ta'ayyun, tadammun, hudud al-sihha, and imtiyaz. So you determine what the thing is first. What's actually going on? Then you determine its implications. What does it include? Okay, so think of that like a recipe that's broken down into ingredients, and then you know all the ingredients to understand the whole dish. Okay, and then the limits of the validity of that thing. How correct is it? Okay, where does it start? Where does it end? Is it right? Is it wrong? And then seeing the differences between that and comparable things. Like, for example, you have twin sisters. How do you know them? How can you spot the differences to avoid confusion between the twins, right? For example, the attribute of seeing. So you ask yourself, somebody saying, okay, they can see everything, right? They can see like Allah. Well, is it human-like what they're saying? No. What's the extent of their seeing? What they're claiming? Allah's is unlimited. Has this limitations? It does. But does Allah have no limitations? No. What's the implications? Oh, they're omniscient. Right? And what's the differentiation? Allah's attributes, his seeing is unique. Right? So we look at every aspect of it. In other words, when you encounter a belief, a practice, or a concept, you'd understand the concept first. But you're trying to determine where it stands, you understand the concept first. Is it relate to the oneness of Allah, or does it involve shirk? Does it include all the aspects of the belief that is it affirming or violating the principles of Tawhid? Are there boundaries in this so-called practice or belief? Is it within the boundaries of Tawhid? Or is it crossing into shirk? Can we clearly differentiate between shirk and Tawhid in this particular thing that we're trying to determine? Because we don't want to confuse things. We don't want to overlap. We've got to be very clear. We're going to end this portion of our study here. We're going to take a break, but this is the summary of what we've spoken about. That Tawheed and Shirk are opposites. To claim Shirk, again, is to claim a believer is no longer a believer. Tawheed is a fundamental belief. To believe in the ultimate unique oneness of Allah that has no share. And we studied the 7 pillars through Surah Al-Ikhlas. And that this involves knowing Allah, His essence, His attributes. And that there are attributes that are exclusive and there's attributes that are common. And we're going to further study this one by one in the coming weeks. We're going to look at all the attributes and the exclusiveness and the commonness. We're going to further understand that and develop our understanding of that. And then shirk is to believe something other than Allah, that thing other than Allah carries the same exclusive essences or attributes. And so we've got to determine shirk by specifying what exclusive essence, what attribute is being attributed to someone other than him. What aspect of Tawheed, therefore, is being violated and to what extent. And we can't mix the permissible with the impermissible. Okay? What we'll do here is now we'll take a 5-minute break before we start looking at bid'ah, inshallah. I need to have water and to recover some energy. So, inshallah, give me 5 minutes. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the comments. I might make an anonymous link as well for this group. Inshallah. Have a break. Okay, alhamdulillah. Are we all here? Alaikum salam. Yeah, no problem, you're late. That's normal, isn't it? Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we move on now to bid'ah. We have ideas now. Okay, so bid'ah, literally, the lexical meaning is coming from bada'ah, which means creating or inventing something new without a basis, an origin, or a precedent. Okay? For example, Allah uses bid'ah or the offshoots of the word in the Quran. There's examples of it. Okay? The literal meanings of bid'ah. For example, Allah says He is Badi'. Allah describes Himself as the Badi'. The Badi'u samawati wal ard. That Allah is the originator. He is the inventor. He is the inventor of the heavens and the earth. Badi'. Meaning that not every, or rather meaning every new phase of creation is a bid'ah. Someone that brings something non-existent into existence is known as badi'ah, the originator. So lexically, literally, bid'ah doesn't have a negative connotation. Otherwise, Allah wouldn't have never used it for Himself. It doesn't have a negative connotation. Unfortunately, now bid'ah now is seen as a four-letter swear word. Okay, it doesn't have a negative connotation in and of itself. Allah also says ibtada'a for the practice of monasticism that they invented. As for monasticism that they invented and something that we never prescribed for them, ma katabnaha alayhim. For that ayah, Allah uses the word ibtada'a, and it's used again as a derivative of bid'ah, and it's a broad term again to describe something that's coming that's new, right? Monasticism is like monks and nuns and spiritual seclusion, stuff like that. Allah also says bid'an for the Prophet ﷺ, and He said, "Qul, say, O Prophet, ma kuntu bid'an min ar-rusul, that I am not the first messenger ever sent. I'm not a bid'ah. I'm not a bid'ah, right?" So this uses the word bid'ah because the Arabs thought the message of Islam was new and it's unheard of. They thought it was new, but it wasn't new. And here then, bid'ah is used to describe something that is not new, but it has a prior precedent. Again, explaining the linguistic meaning of bid'ah being anything new that doesn't have basis, origin, or precedent, but also if it does have a prior basis, it can still be bid'ah. It can still be bid'ah linguistically. Linguistically, right? Okay, now, what's the applied meaning? There's going to be three keywords. أحدث ما ليس فيه ما ليس منه. We're going to now look at hadith, and we'll come back to Quran more so in the next session. We'll come back to Quran. So now that's the lexical meaning. Something new, without precedent, without basis, without form example. What's the applied meaning? What is it as science? How do we apply it within the deen itself? According to Sayyidah Aisha, radiallahu anha wa adaha, the mother of our believers, she said that the Rasul said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa fihi fahuwa radd." That whoever invents into this matter of ours, as in our deen, something that has no basis in it, it's rejected. This is in Al-Bukhari, it's in Muslim, it's in many collections. It's a muttafaqun alayh. Hadith is very strong. Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad. This is another version, also in the same collections. Whoever invents into this matter of ours as in our deen, something that is not from it, it's rejected. Okay, so how do you understand this? That's what we're going to look at. What does this mean? So there's keywords here. أحدث ما ليس فيه ما ليس منه. Okay, أحدث means something that's originated, that is new in the deen. ما ليس فيه is used to specify what new means, as in there's no basis in it. Ma laysa minhu is used to specify what new means as well, as in what? No basis from it. Okay? Now, here's a question. If ahdatha refers to inventing something new in the deen, why use the words ma laysa fihi? Why use the words ma laysa minhu? Because if something already exists, there's no need to call it new. But if something is new, there's no need to say what is from it or not, what's not from it, or what's not in it. If it already exists, it's not new. The question is why did she use these words? Why did she use these words? It's because not every new matter or affair is condemned or rejected. Only those things are rejected that have no basis, that have no reference, that have no precedent. And it's specifically new matters that are added to the deen, to a particular thing, the fundamentals of the deen as essentials and obligations. So it's something, a bid'ah, the technical meaning of bid'ah is something that's added or deleted from the basic principles of Islam as revolts against the deen, or that cause a strife, that cause disruption, they cause fitna. Which is why Imam al-Ghazali said not every bid'ah is prohibited. The prohibited bid'ah is the one that opposes established sunnah and revokes a matter of sharia. Yeah? Now we're going to further explain this. Like, how is this possible? You know, every action has two dimensions. You have an origin, you have an asl, and you have its form. For example, salah. The essence of salah is the remembrance of Allah. But its form is performing it in a specific way at a specific time, and that time is prescribed for us. The essence of fasting is taqwa. But leaving eating and drinking, etc., for a specific period of time, that's its form. Okay, so everything has an origin, it has a form. When ma laysa fihi is said, what's not in it, or what's not from it, this is a reference to additions that have no root in Sharia or have any prior example or precedent. That's why the third person pronouns use he, who. It's referring to what was mentioned before it. Hada, as in amrina, hada, the matter of ours. Inventing something that didn't exist in the essentials of the religion, but is included in the obligations and principles. This is going to come clearer as we look at the reality of it. So what we're trying to say here is that bid'ah means a breach. It means a violation. It means an act of opposition against the deen. It's those innovations that are called fitna. It is those innovations that are misguided. They are what are referred to as dalalah. And what's so interesting about this hadith that we've just mentioned, Imam Ibn Majah, he mentions this in the chapter on the veneration of hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And every scholar, every hadith scholar, they placed a particular hadith in a certain chapter with a certain heading. They made the headings, right? So that's a lexical bid'ah. Collection of hadith and doing these categorizations is a lexical bid'ah. It was never done before. The Prophet ﷺ never did that. He never created the categories of hadith, sahih, da'if, mawdu'. He never did that. That's a lexical bid'ah. He never did that. companions never did that. Huh? Now, they place things in chapters, meaning, according to Imam Ibn Majah, this hadith, one of his understandings is that this hadith is an attribute to a false tradition. As in to say, bringing a change to Qur'an or bringing a change to traditions, fabricating things is a bid'ah. That's the cursed thing. That's what's rejected. Yeah. Again, we're going to really, really hone this in. We're going to try and understand this. Here's another hadith. من عمل عملا ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. That whoever performs an action that is not from our affair, same words. But here is ليس عليه أمرنا. Is rejected. Again from Sayyidah Aisha. This phrase that I've highlighted, generally what we hear from people is that it means a bid'ah, an innovation, because it's got no clear command or text, the nas from Qur'an and Sunnah, or it's something that the Prophet ﷺ didn't do, or it's something that the companions didn't do. And so that's what it means, not from our affair, that is rejected. Even if it's a righteous deed, even if it's something that's connected to a goodness, donating rewards, celebrating the Mawlid, or some sort of social or spiritual or moral welfare, this interpretation is actually intellectual dishonesty. It is not rooted on guidance. And I'll explain why. Okay? I'll explain why. Sometimes there's a genuine disagreement, but sometimes there isn't. If we assume that an act having no command from the Quran and Sunnah is unlawful, then what will happen to all the permissible acts of Sharia? They don't have a command. They're permissible by default because there's no command. Mubah by definition is something that has no command or injunction. What do we do about that? And there's other things. The words "it is rejected" is applied. Number one, again, we remember the hadith when there's no basis whatsoever. There's no precedent. But then we've got to figure out, what does that mean? Right? Is it only opposes and contravenes the Sharia, but it also negates the deen and it breaches rulings given in the Sunnah. These are elements of bid'ah. You know, just how we said shirk has to be looked at seriously, bid'ah also has to be looked at seriously. When we claim something, we've got to be serious about it. We've got to look at it properly, not just automatically. So bid'ah as such is an act that's new, yes. But whether it has a direct or indirect basis in the Quran and the Sunnah, but it's something that also must be included in the essentials of the deen, and it contravenes it. That's what's called bid'ah dalala or bid'ah sayyah. That's what the Prophet ﷺ meant when every new matter is an innovation. Kullu bid'atin dalala. That it implies not every new act can be declared a misguidance. This will become even more apparent when we're studying now. So a new act, it can have a legal proof or a legitimacy, but it's not legally an innovation, like I explained before. Though it might be literally, and we need to apply the term bid'ah correctly. To do that, we've got to look at the whole picture. You see, people just mention these hadith, they don't look at all the other hadith. They don't look at what the Quran says. They don't look at all the hadith. You need to complete a picture. You need a complete context. Imagine now that Tahir, his entire life is recorded, or Usman's entire life is recorded. Everything he says is recorded. And then 1400 years later is read. All those statements now are being read from a time where there was a particular context involved. There was something happening. It's the same for hadith. And this is what people forget. For example, musical instruments. there's two groups. A group will say musical instruments haram. A group where in fact, there's three groups. One group haram, one group everything's fine, everything's fine, and the middle group. This is where we want to be. Ideally, it's no problem being at haram either. I'm not saying that's not right. Haram is also fine because that's substantiated. There's evidence for that. But the middle group, that's a middle group where not everything is haram and not everything is halal. Right? There's a context. For example, when musical instruments was mentioned, if you look at the bigger hadith, it was also always mentioned within a context of certain individuals and certain practices. That was always the context. And then those hadith where it was referred to directly, it meant musical instruments was connected to that context. It's not like a black and white thing, right? So we need to look at what was actually innovations by the understanding of the Prophet ﷺ. What did he refer to as innovations himself? What did he refer to? Which people did he refer to? That's what's missing from the discourse. That's what I meant by intellectual dishonesty. The first innovations were these: a rejection of zakat, false claimants of prophethood, apostasy, the uprising of the Khawarij. These are the first, and these are all substantiated from hadith, from the times of the Khulafa. These examples are what were regarded as bid'ah after the passing of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Why? Because these were unprecedented matters. They were new things, they were innovations, but they were dissensions. They went against the Qur'an and Sunnah, very clearly went against them. And we're going to now study that. How am I saying it's this? Why am I being so adamant that the Qur'an and Sunnah actually refers to bid'ah in this sense? Here's a hadith from Abu Dawood, Kitab al-Sunnah, under the necessity of adhering to the Sunnah. Okay, by Irbad bin Sariyah, radiyallahu anhuma. This is a Sahih hadith. One day, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu led us in prayer, then faced us and gave us words of advice, at which our eyes shed tears and our hearts trembled. And a man said, Messenger of Allah, it seems as if this is your departing advice. So what command do you give us? And then he said, Usikum bitaqwallah, that I enjoin you and advise you to remain mindful of Allah, have taqwa. وَالسَّمْعِ وَالطَّاعَةِ, and to hear and obey your leader. Your leader. وَإِنَّ عَبْدًا, and even if it's a slave, even if it's a slave. Jabashiyah is Abyssinian slave. Even if it's a slave. For those who live after me, they will see something. They're going to see اختلافا كثيرا. They're going to see a great disagreement, a dissension, a rebellion. So what must you do? فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي. So you should follow and be attached to my sunnah. وَسُنَّةِ الْخُلَفَاءِ الْمَهْدِيِّينَ الرَّاشِدِينَ. And you must also clench to the sunnah of the rightly guided caliphs. Sunnah, my sunnah, and the sunnah, the ways of the rightly guided caliphs. And hold on to it fast. Clench it firmly with your teeth. And then he says, guard against whatever dissenting matters. Muhdathat al-umur. The muhdatha, the word that we heard before from the hadith of Sayyidah Aisha. Guard against muhdatha, something new that's forced into the deen. For every muhdatha, فَإِنَّ كُلَّ مُحْدَثَ بِدْعَةٍ. Because every muhdatha is a bid'ah, it's an innovation. And every innovation, وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ, the Prophet ﷺ has he's already defined it. It's muhdathatul umur. That bid'ah is that. And then muhdatha, the muhdatha is a bid'ah. That muhdatha, al-umur, is the bid'ah. And then that bid'ah is dalala. That bid'ah is the misguidance. But he set the context for it. Things that you're going to see straight after me. And he's connected it to leadership. And he's also mentioned the sunnah of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, meaning they have a significant play in what actually is determining bid'ah. Yeah? Now, we look at this hadith. What was the commands? Adopt taqwa, be obedient to your leader, even if it's an Abyssinian slave, and be aware of the period immediately after me. As in the Khulafa, the period of fitna in the Khulafa al-Rashidin, that period. Because something's going to happen. Innovation. As in these first four things, in anticipation of the period, we're told to keep Sunnah of the Rasul, the Sunnah of the Khulafa Rashidin, and this sets the context and the specification of mentioning innovation. Meaning that muhdathat al-umur are the dissensions that were to arise immediately after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ declared those things as bid'ah and those things as misguidance. Yet today we want to declare everything possible as bid'ah without consideration. Let's look at this further. The Prophet ﷺ here, he's given his advice on how to face innovations as well. That they're going to, and also that they're going to challenge something fundamental of Islam, such as the things that actually happened after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, the bid'at, the rejection of zakat, taking others as prophets. There weren't actions that were connected to pious deeds like collective Qur'an recitation or collective recitation of different salawat, the mawlid, or things like that. And this is made more clear in another version of the hadith. This is also sahih in At-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Musnad of Ahmad, and others. One day, after the morning prayer, after the Ba'da Salati al-Ghada, the morning prayer, the Prophet ﷺ addressed us with an eloquent sermon. And that caused our eyes to well with tears and hearts trembled. Same words. And then a man stood up and said, same words, that it's like somebody's bidding farewell to us. So what are you entrusting with us? He said, I entrust you with taqwa of Allah and to listen and obey the ruler, even if an Abyssinian slave, even if it's that. And whoever among you lives, you will see much great dissension. And then again, guard against whatever dissensions emerge, for indeed they lead to misguidance. If someone among you sees that, then he must adhere to my sunnah and the sunnah of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, the rightly guided Khulafa. Cling to it firmly with your teeth. Okay? This is why the Rasul said that I am your forerunner at the basin, at the Hawd, on the Day of Judgment. Some amongst you will be presented to me, and when I try to hand water, they will be pulled away from me by force. And whereupon I will say, Rabbi, ashabi, 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 they're my companions, they're my companions, they're my companions. And then Allah will say, you don't know what innovations they originated after you. After you. Huh? أحدثوا بعدك. Another hadith in Sahih. That one was from Al-Bukhari, this is Muslim. My community would come to me at the basin, and I would remove other people from it, just as someone drives away the camels of others from his own. And the people said, Ya Rasulullah, would you recognize us? He said, yes. You'd have a mark which other people won't have. You will come to me with your foreheads, your hands, your feet bright due to wudu, due to ablution, or illumination, as another translation for you for wudu, illumination. Huh? But a group among you will be stopped from coming to me. So they will not meet us. Then I will say, O my Lord, Ya Rabbi, هؤلاء min ashabi. They are from my people, from my companions. And upon that, an angel will say, هل تدري ما أحدثوا بعدك. Surely, indeed, هل is used here in that sense, an emphasis. This is established also in the Quran. Whenever hal is used in the meaning of indeed. Right? You know what innovations they did into the deen after you. Surely you know that. And in another version of this hadith, one day the Prophet ﷺ came to us, he stood amongst us, addressed us, and gave us advice on what to adhere to and what to avoid. And he said that what Allah willed, then pronounced, worship Allah. اعبدوا الله ولا تشركوا به شيئا. Worship Allah and do not make shirk with Him. Obey Him to whom Allah assigns your affairs. وأطيعوا. Because if somebody might disagree and say, okay, when in the other hadith, the Rasul mentioned, listen and obey, listen and obey. He didn't mention leadership. Specifically, he didn't mention it. This hadith specifies leadership. But also then why would you mention, even if it's an Abyssinian slave, listen and obey? It means leadership. It means those who? The khulafa. He's talking about the khulafa. Obey them. Right? Don't quarrel with them. Who merits leadership. Even if he's an Abyssinian slave. Incumbent on you is what you are familiar with from the sunnah of your prophet and the rightly guided caliphs. As in what they say as well. So clench it firmly with your teeth. As in be steadfast and adherent to it. These hadiths, they're actually showing us what bid'ah means. They're giving us context that's missing. And what's clear from this is that bid'ah, that's a misguidance, is connected to the instructions of the Prophet ﷺ in the time of the Khulafa, the time of fitna. To stay away from their opponents is to stay away from bid'ah. Who, due to their opposition to the leadership, became innovators. Is that clear? But surely we can't limit bid'ah to that, can we? Surely it's not restricted to that time. Well, that would be true. What we're saying is the specific meaning of bid'ah is this, that it's a dissension that adds or removes essentials of the deen. In any period, in any era, that results in one thing, apostasy. The result of bid'ah has to be this. You're claiming to be a prophet. You're claiming a new revelation. You're claiming a new religion. You're claiming a new Kaaba. You know, sometimes those people, they're doing Mawlid and they made a little Kaaba, or they're doing they've got the green dome and stuff like that. And are they claiming a new Kaaba? Are they claiming a new thing? Right? Okay. Are they changing the pillars of Islam from 5 to 9? Are they removing the need to pray Fajr or Isha? There's people in the summer months in the UK, they say you don't have to pray Fajr and Isha. That's a bid'ah. Because they say if Fajr and Isha don't come, the conditions of it aren't met. Because there's no night. And there is no night in the summer months in the UK. There's no night. Technically, there's no night. But that doesn't mean you remove Fajr and Isha. We've been given a way of determining that. These are bid'ah, these are misguidances. These are what makes you an innovator. But the general meaning of bid'ah is something else. So there's a specific meaning. It's that, what I've explained. The general meaning is that the hadith scholars and the jurists, they've used bid'ah to imply a lexical innovation or a commendable innovation, a bid'ah hasana, a bid'ah lughiyya. Whereas the condemned bid'ah the innovation, sayyi'ah, is dalala, is misguidance. That results in what? Two things: apostasy and rejection of the deen. What's the proof for this? Oh, Qari Sahib, I've never heard this definition in my life. What's the proof of this? This is bid'ah, I never heard it in my life. Okay, I'll give you the evidence. This is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari. It's also in Muslim by Abdullah ibn Abbas. He narrates that the Prophet ﷺ said, O people, you be gathered before Allah barefooted, naked, and circumcised. Then he recited the verse, كما بدأنا أول خلق نعيد وعدا علينا إنا كنا فاعلين, all the way till the end. He recited this verse. The way we were created in the first time, the same process of creation will emerge, and the promise of Allah will manifest. And then said, listen, the first to be dressed on the day of judgment will be Ibrahim alayhi salam. Listen, certainly people from my ummah will be brought, and they will be grabbed from their left sides. And I will say, my Lord, my people, usayhabi, 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 my companions. And we said, do you not know what dissensions they originated in the deen after you? إِنَّكَ لَا تَدْرِي مَا أَحْدَثُوا بَعْدَكَ. The same word, أحدث. Do you not know what they did? What they invented? So I will say, Al-Abdul Salih, the pious servant of Allah, said, as in who? Isa alayhi salam. He said, now the Prophet quoted this Quranic verse. وَكُنْتُ عَلَيْهِمْ شَهِيدًا مَا دُمْتُ فِيهِمْ فَلَمَّا تَوَفَّيْتَنِي كُنْتَ أَنْتَ الرَّقِيبَ عَلَيْهِمْ. He quoted this verse. And the Isa alayhi salam said that I was a vigilant watcher over their beliefs and actions, so long as I was amongst them. But when you lifted me up, then you alone watched over their affairs. You are a witness to everything. If you torment them, they are only your servants. And if you forgive them, you are indeed almighty or wise. Then it will be said to me, they became apostates the moment you left them. As in, a result of their ahdath, their bid'ah, they became apostates. As in, the result of a bid'ah is actually becoming apostate. It's becoming an apostate. So what we've discovered from these hadith is one point, and that they all talk about ihdath, muhdathat, and that this refers to new things that are dissensions at the level of apostasy, which emerge immediately after the passing of the Rasul during the time of the rightly guided caliphs. In the hadith we just read, those who the Prophet identified as his people hadn't reached firm faith. They turned away from the deen. And then at the end we see clarification that the Prophet he's told and he's mentioned that how ahdathu, dissensions, means apostasy. As in the muhdithin, the innovators, they're murtadeen, they're apostates. And there's other hadith that further support this. We don't have time for it. The innovations means creating dissension that results in apostasy, proving that this is actually bid'ah and this is misguidance. Meaning what? That bid'ah is a bid'ah dalala, a misguidance, when a fundamental change is being made to the religion. It's not everything. And who are these innovators? The first of them was somebody called Abdullah bin Dhul Khuwaysara. It shouldn't be Dhal. There's a misspelling there. It shouldn't be Dhal. It's Dhul. Dhul Khuwaysara at-Tamimi. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, in his Majmu' al-Fatawa, this was the first innovator because he objected to the distribution of the war booty by the Prophet ﷺ after the Battle of Hunayn. He also included, as in Ibn Taymiyyah, the first individuals was the Shia, but they were the first innovators. What's common between these two? They rejected something directly connected to the Rasul. It was a denigration of the Rasul. And they were the first mubtadi'as, the first that innovated. And often those now, in today's day and age, that use the slogan of bid'ah, they're amongst those that don't want to respect the Rasul. They share very similar characteristics to Abdullah bin Dhul al-Khuwaisara, who the Prophet ﷺ described. And then the first group are the Khawarij, who is agreed upon unanimously by the Tabi'een, by the Tabi'een, the Imams, the Hadith, that they were the first of those that did the bid'ah. And the architect of this group was Abdullah bin Dhul Khuwaisara al-Tamimi. He was architect. And there's certain signs of them that have been mentioned in Hadith as well. And one of the signs is that they will always emphasize Tawhid. All they talk about is Tawhid. That's one of the signs that the Prophet ﷺ gave. And that they declare everyone else as mushriks and innovators. We see this today. The same group. Tawheed, Tawheed, Tawheed. Oh, mushrik, bid'ah, mushrik, bid'ah, mushrik, bid'ah. That's what they talk about. And the Prophet ﷺ talk about them. But he gave us 6 signs in Hadith. I don't have time to go through them, but it will be mentioned, and they're mentioned in the book that we're studying, that 6 signs, they will come in the latter days. They're going to be young people. They're going to be lacking wisdom. They will give references from the Qur'an all the time, in everything. They will have Islamic slogans and manifestos, but they will depart from the deen. Despite all of that, they will be away from the deen, like an arrow leaving its bow and hitting its target. They won't be in the deen. Another then example of the first innovators was the claims of Tulayha al-Asadi. He claimed prophecy. The claims of Musaylama al-Kadhab claimed prophecy. Sajah bint Haritha, a Tamimiyya, she claimed prophecy. And then apostasy, when the Rasul ﷺ passed away, people started to leave Islam. Okay? Based on things they were hearing. A bid'ah. A rejection of zakat that then emerged. And everything emerging from the Khawarij. And there's other signs and references for this as well. So how do we determine the bid'ah then? We have to ask these questions. Does it reject a fundamental belief? Does it reject the 5 pillars? Does it add or remove from the 5 pillars? Does it deny prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ? Does it attempt to doctor the Qur'an? As in, does it attempt to remove its verses, change it, attribute fabrications? Does it initiate a new sect like the Khawarij? Does it nullify jihad? Does it legalize usury? Does it reject things like this? And this is all based on hadith. And the fact that innovations are dissensions that result in apostasy. Minor matters of difference are not included in this. To do that is a mockery of Islam. To do that is a mockery of Islam because bid'ah, as we explained, it carries serious consequences. It leads to apostasy. It leads, because it involves a rejection of fundamentals. Just like shirk leads to what? Kufr, disbelief. Takes you out of Islam. So we've got to be very serious in how we determine what is bid'ah and what is not. But I've given you a context from hadith that is missing. The Prophet ﷺ explained that I will pass, and then after me, you need to follow the companions because something's going to happen. There's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be a group of people you're going to see that are not going to follow the Khulafa in the time of the Khulafa, what are they going to do? They're going to reject zakat. They're going to reject prophethood. They're going to reject the Prophet ﷺ and become Shia. Or they're going to reject the Khulafa, become Shia. They're going to reject certain things from the Quran, right? And then that has a consequence. It's going to take you out of Islam. So that's one thing. And then you have secondary matters that have difference of opinion. You don't have to do them. The Mawlid, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. There's genuine difference of opinion. And that's secondary. And if you do it, or you don't do it, it doesn't matter. Because they don't result in apostasy. They don't result in you rejecting a pillar of Islam. In fact, they promote Islam. They carry good deeds through righteous actions. You know, there's a dream that was related to from one of our imams in Syria. He said that he used to do the Mawlid, and the way they used to do the Mawlid, it was just Quran recitation, sending salawat on the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you know, reading his seerah. That's all they did. And they used to give food out. And this one time he didn't have money to do it, to give the food. And he was really saddened by it because he used to do it every year. And then he had a dream, and the Prophet ﷺ came in his dream. So what saddens you? And he says, I do the Mawlid every year, but I don't have the means to feed people now. And I'm very upset by that. And then the next day, a man came to his house, and he came with money. And he said, I had a dream, and the Rasul ﷺ instructed me to come and give you the money to do your gathering. And so these are secondary things. That's my whole point, that we've got to take this seriously, right? People will jump to make things bid'ah, and also on top of that, curse people, denigrate their brothers and sisters. They will speak in a way that's not befitting of believers. You know, it's not befitting. I was speaking to someone, and they said to me that they don't celebrate certain things, including the Mawlid. And then, you know, they don't do these gatherings. And I said, that's fine. You know, I would rather that you say to me that you want to focus on your fard than make an argument and a fight over something that has a difference of opinion on it. I would rather you focus on fard. I would rather you focus on doing something necessary. But here's the issue. That individual started adding words to it. They started saying, it's the worst thing in the world to do the Mawlid. It's this, it's that. It carries the wrath of Allah. Where's your evidence for that? I have so much evidence on the contrary, you know, but I'm not saying to you that because you're not doing the Mawlid, there's something wrong with you. Don't do it. I have no issues with that. Marhaban. If you're not comfortable, don't do it. But if you ever want a conversation to understand why people do it, the best thing to do is to do the same thing that you have to do to determine shirk. Go and attend their gatherings. See what they do. Don't base things on hearsay. Do not look. Our deen is based on hadith and facts. And those facts are based on somebody hearing it, who saw it, who then also passed it on, and it reached a level where it's so known that it's unquestionable. It's so known, it's unquestionable, right? And it's the same thing here. But what people do, they'll hear something. Oh, these individuals, they do a gathering and they think the Prophet ﷺ sat there on the chair, look at the chair over there. I've never seen that in my life, right? Uh, or my suggestion to them was, you go, you see it, you see what they do, ask questions. What's their belief? What do they base it on? Try to understand things, because that's going to increase your own knowledge and also your interactions with your fellow Muslims. If you come to them with a basis of understanding, you have more chance of a good relationship, a positivity, not something that's negative. You have to understand one another, and that's important. But rather than just hearing something, seeing a video, and quickly dismissing it and saying this is this and this is that. It's not the way of Muslims. We've been given Qur'an and Sunnah. We've been given the Sunnah of the Khulafa, the Sunnah of the Imams. And so now what we're going to do, moving on into the next weeks, we're going to look at this and substantiate all of what we've discussed even further. Okay, it's going to make even more sense. We're going to look more progressively in understanding these things, right? So today we've looked at what these things mean and how to navigate the meaning, and why it's so significant that we do that. Because we're dealing with believers. It's a big thing. And so we're going to then look at next week in terms of Tawhid and Shirk, in Rububiyyah, in Lordship, and what that means. And in what circumstances would it be Shirk in Lordship? And then in divinity, and the divine nature of Allah, and in essence, what it would mean to be Tawheed, what it means for Shirk in that. And how do we apply that with the 7 pillars, with the understanding that we took of Shirk and of Tawheed, and then Bid'ah. Now, the next thing we're going to do, now we've looked at these hadith, we've understood the context of Bid'ah and what it actually is through hadith, Sahih hadith. We've not looked at anything weak, anything questionable, everything combined. Hasan, there's some that are Hasan, but most, they're all Sahih. Right? Even if you get a collection of hadith that are Hasan and there's something that's Sahih, it gets upgraded in its grading. We're going to look at Qur'an next. Specifically, we're going to look at the verse where Allah mentions bid'ah and what He says about it. And then we're going to look at hadith even further, and we're going to look at what the companions did, what they said about bid'ah, and then the salaf. So to further substantiate the meaning of bid'ah and what we've explained. And then following week, and then we'll build on that. And then in the last week, we'll build on that. And we'll go on to the Imams and the Hadith. And inshallah, we'll continue with this next week. If anyone has any questions or comments, you're welcome to drop them in. This has been recorded and it will be uploaded and it'll be shared in the group. If you want questions to be anonymous, I'll also send a link in the group where you can send questions into that, so they are anonymous, inshallah. So if anybody does have any questions now, you can do that, and inshallah we can otherwise put the session to close. Got any questions, Tahir?
Would you think the thing that Shia do during the time of Muharram, would that be classed as bid'ah when they're hitting themselves?
Yeah, bid'ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's what he asked about the Shias and what they do and stuff. I'm saying yes, it's a bid'ah.
and they're screaming Ali and hitting themselves.
Yeah. But inshallah, what we want to do, the key lesson today is that We always have to look at things holistically, with a full picture, with a broad perspective, with a not a restrictive mindset, but an inclusive mindset, and not a narrowed mindset, but a wide. We have to have both depth and width. As Muslims, we have to have depth and we have to have width. This is our weakness now. We don't have depth and we don't have width in anything that we do. We don't look at the macro, we don't look at the micro, and we don't look at the great picture. And it's really important that we do that with everything, especially these serious matters, the Tawhid, Shirk, and Bid'ah, because they concern belief. It is very serious. And it's not a light matter to declare somebody a mushrik, to declare somebody a mubtadi', because of the consequences of it. The presentation, yeah, I can send this, I can send the slides as well. If you want the slides, I can send a link to it as well, inshallah. I'll send a link to it. Okay, inshallah. Okay, inshallah. We'll end it here. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله استغفرك ونتوب إليك يا حي يا قيوم. صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Recording start.